Hi folks, this is a chicken video as you see from the title, and I wanted to do this for a while. And because I have so many subscribers who either are moving to a property, hope to move to a property, have already moved to a property, and are contemplating getting chickens but haven't yet, this is one little aspect of raising chickens that I think bears a discussion. Now I have a frog in my throat. It's been a very strange summer, as you probably know, and I'm a little bit, I don't have a cough or anything. It's just my throat's been dry. It's been very strange. This whole summer has been odd in so many ways, but there will be no discussion of current world events today. We're talking about broody hens. We're talking about the ins and outs of broody hens, people's misconceptions about broody hens, and all kinds of stuff. First, what is a broody hen? It's basically a hen that nature has kicked her in the head, and her hormones have kicked in, and she wishes to hatch eggs. She wants to hatch chicks. It is a hormone thing. She has no control over that, and neither do you. There's one myth broken, because people think you can make your hen go broody. You can't make a hen go broody. If she's inclined to go broody, you may think you can do some things to encourage her to do that. Oftentimes, if hens tend to be broody in general, and many don't, okay. Just other hens in the coop going broody can kind of throw her over the edge. But a broody hen basically wants to hatch chicks, and they don't always. And there are certain breeds that are supposed to be broody breeds. That does not always hold true with hatchery stock. Much of the hatchery stock, the common laying breeds that you see in your local feed stores every spring, the Wyandottes, the Barred Rocks, the production reds, sometimes called Rhode Island Reds. They don't usually sell true Rhode Island Reds. They usually sell production reds. And the Buff Orpingtons, just the general breeds you see every time you go to a feed store in the spring. Most of those, if you get a heritage line, not from a hatchery, many of those will brood. However, if you get hatchery stock, sometimes that trait has been bred out of those birds in favor of egg production. Because when a hen is broody, she doesn't lay eggs. She sits and she waits for something to hatch. And she knows how long it's going to take, basically. I started out with hatchery birds. I had 8 hatchery hens. I had 3 silver lace Wyandottes. I had 2 Buff Orpingtons. I had 3 Rhode Island Reds, hatchery Rhode Island Reds, production reds. Only one of those birds ever went broody. And Buff Orpingtons are supposed to have the broody trait. But not mine. None of the Barred Rocks, none of the Rhode Island Reds, nobody ever went broody. Except for one of the Buff Orpingtons. Sunny. Her name was Sunny. Let me tell you what I learned from Sunny. When Sunny went broody the first time, and broody you can usually tell when they start sitting on that nest a long time. If you go to put your hand in there, she screams at you, she may try to bite you. If somebody approaches her in the pen, she fluffs up and she flares out all her feathers and she screams like a crazy woman. And sometimes she'll just be pecking around, all of a sudden she'll just scream out. I call that the broody war cry. Sunny went broody. And I tried to break her up. What that means is you do things to discourage her sitting. You don't let eggs stay in the nest. Everybody's laying eggs. You don't let eggs stay in the nest all day. You remove them as soon as they are laid, if you can. Excuse me. I know this is going to be a problem. You remove them as soon as you can. You don't let eggs sit around. Don't put plastic eggs in your nest boxes. People do that usually when hens are about to lay with the pullets. which are hens under a year old, when they're about to lay or close to it, they may put a plastic egg or something, a fake egg in a nest box to encourage them to lay in that location. But you don't need to do that to make them lay, because you can't make them lay. Their hormones determine that. But Sunny went broody. She had all the classic signs. She was broody. The problem is, at that time, I did not have a rooster in the flock, so the eggs were not fertile. When that flock was about 10 months old, I did purchase a rooster. That's the only one I ever bought that I brought here. He was in quarantine for 5 weeks. That's a whole other story. But and he wasn't ill. He was fine. And I actually had to nurse him back to health because he was malnourished from being fed improper feed and being kept in bad conditions. That's, like I said, that's another story. But at the time that Sunny went broody, I did not have a rooster, therefore my eggs were not fertile. I didn't really know if I wanted any more at that point, so I was not going to try to purchase hatching eggs from someone else and put them under her. So I tried to break her up. I tried all of the usual things that people tell you to do. I even went to the extreme of taking a Ziploc bag full of ice cubes and putting it under her. And guess what? That didn't do it. Dunking her in cold water didn't do it. Nothing broke that hen. Until when she was about to the end of the full term, about 3 weeks in, almost 3 weeks in, and I was taking her off the nest every day. I was making sure, I thought she was eating and drinking. And she could have been what I call fake eating, which is they'll pick up food and they'll drop it. You'll think they're eating it, but they're not really. But I was taking her off the nest every day to make sure that she was maintaining her nutrition and her hydration. At least I thought that was what she was doing. I was watching her and she seemed to be doing that. And I put her in front of the food one day and I saw her do this with her head. And her head was turning upside down. I went, uh-oh, something's wrong. She's showing signs of something wrong. And of course, I was a member of BackyardChickens.com even before I had my chickens. So I went to the forum to ask for advice. And an old breeder in Texas named Wes, I don't even know what happened to Wes. He's had chickens for a long time. He said, this is what you need to do. He said, get one of the vitamin E gel caps, punch a hole in it and squeeze it into her beak once or twice a day. And he said, you will have to get a syringe, a needleless syringe, and you will have to squirt water into her beak. You have to make sure she's getting hydrated. So I began that intense therapy that Wes had suggested to me for Sunny. And within a couple of days, she snapped out of it and she quit being broody. She did eventually go broody again, probably a year later. I can't remember how much later it was. I have to go back and look, and that's a long time ago. She eventually did go broody a second time. At that time, I had a grow-out pen of about 25 chicks that were a couple of weeks old, I think. I can't remember exactly how old they were. They were 3, 4 weeks. I mean, they were getting up there. And I had Sunny in a cage next to them. There was a fence separating them. It was in the same room, basically. I had Sunny with her she had a couple of chicks. She'd hatched 2 barred Plymouth Rock chicks. And next to her was 25 chicks. And she kept acting like she wanted to go in there with them. And I kept observing her and watching her, and I said, you know, Tom, she acts like she wants those chicks. And I said, what if I just try her in there with them and see what she does? I took her in there and I sat her down. Those chicks just swarmed her. It's like they were hatched in an incubator. They'd never had a mom. But the instinct is there. They know what they should have. And those chicks just swarmed. They were all over her, and she was in heaven. She adopted 25 chicks along with her 2 that she had. I think hers were about 2 weeks old at the time, I think. And I think the others were a couple of weeks older. But she raised those chicks up the rest of the way. Thankfully, I was happy to have somebody, you know, help with that. And she was in hog heaven. And actually, Sunny, in those 2 broody periods, she didn't lay eggs, and she actually was my longest lived hatchery hen at the time. She lived to be 6.5 years old, which was very old for that group. They started dying at 2 years old of egg yolk peritonitis and internal laying, and just one by one, all those hens just dropped of the same kind of thing. And Sunny lived the longest. And I really think it's because she took these 2 very long breaks to be broody and to raise chicks. So I did learn a lot from Sunny, and I learned a lot from Wes about what to do and what to watch for when you have a broody hen, because they don't always take care of themselves. That's a myth. They will not always get off the nest to eat and drink and evacuate themselves. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, it's so wonderful to have a broody hen. They do all the work for you. Well, you have to watch broody hens. First time broodies, sometimes they don't work out so well. I've had 2 or 3 different broody hens that the very first time, and it usually ended up being where there was like 1 egg in the nest left at the end where on hatch day, because either they weren't viable or they just, you know, whatever happened, and they'd have 1 egg left. And when the chick makes a hole, first they get into the air cell at the top of the egg, and that's breathing space. And then you might even hear them cheeping in the egg. And then they'll make a little hole in the side of the egg. And then they'll start what we call zipping the egg. They'll actually make a little run all the way around the egg and then pop the top off, and then they hatch. Well, I've had this happen, and Jill, Hector's girl, did it. It's the only time she ever went broody. Oh, well, she's been broody twice. She was broody recently, but I didn't give her any eggs. It's because of what happened the first time. She ended up with 1 egg. This happened with several others. As it was zipping the egg, she crushed it. She clamped down on the egg and crushed it. The reason is, first timers, their hormones will tell them, their instinct and their hormones will tell them to sit. They will sit every day. They'll stay on the nest. They will basically turn the eggs a little bit. They will make sure they're kept warm and moist or whatever. They make sure that the eggs are incubated. However, when that little thing under there starts moving, they start looking. You can actually see it on their faces sometimes. They get this weird puzzled look, and they might look down at like they're looking under at their chest or underneath them, and they may even growl, because they don't understand what the alien underneath them is. They may think it's a mouse. Who knows? Because they've seen plenty of mice, right? So what will happen is they will, as the chick is trying to hatch, they will clamp down and they will actually crush that chick in the egg. Sometimes it's really not crushing, it's just smothering. But they kill the chick as it's hatching. Some broodies, they'll let the chicks hatch, but when that thing pokes out from under them, they go, and they start pecking it. I have had hens kill chicks, literally kill chicks that have hatched. First timers. The positive part of that is often that same hen will go on to the second time to be just a great mom. And it's just the first time they don't understand what's going on. Even Cricket, when those babies were hatching under her and she saw one come out from under, she growled and she looked a little puzzled and startled. And I was, I'd say, oh, look at, this is your baby, Cricket. And I'd pet the baby and, whatever. But, I mean, she didn't need that. She would have figured it out, and she was a great mom. So, and by the way, Cricket is laying again. Which is maybe why she's rejecting the babies now, because she's already back in production. So the first timers are tricky. Sometimes they do it the second time and they're good. Then there was Dusty the Destroyer. Dusty was a big blue Orpington hen that was with my rooster Suede. Dusty, these are breeder quality blue Orpington chickens, and she went broody, and she hatched out the babies beautifully. She took care of them beautifully. At the time, we had a strawberry patch, kind of over where, in front of where that building is, as you go past it to go to the barn. There's a building there. In front of that, there used to be a strawberry patch right around that area. And she would go out with her babies, and they were like 2 weeks old, and everything was good. And all of a sudden, I let her out one day, and she was out digging around with the babies, and I heard squealing. And I went outside, what is that? So what's going on? And I went outside to find Dusty, and I found chicks running and hiding from Mom. She was chasing them around the strawberry patch, which is it was kind of surrounded with just a little chicken wire fence a couple feet high. And she was chasing those chicks, and they were hiding from her, and she was literally trying to kill them. She wasn't just rejecting them, she was trying to kill them. I mean, she'd catch one and she'd start pounding on it, and they were hiding, and they were afraid. They were afraid. And I thought, wow, I've never seen that kind of rejection. I mean, rejecting, just thunk them in the head a little bit, and now kind of just stomp at them a little bit. But this was different. I've never seen anything like it. And so I had to remove Dusty from her chicks. This was only 2 weeks old now. This is not normal rejection time. Normally, they don't reject their chicks until they're at least a month old, 4 to 6 weeks old. I mean, Iris and Mace are, they're going to turn 7 weeks old tomorrow, and Cricket just rejected them. That's normal timing. So I did let Dusty she went broody again, and I did let her have chicks, and I thought, well, maybe that first time was just an aberration. And so she had the chicks, and she was raising them, and they were fine, and we passed the 2-week mark, passed the 3-week mark, past the 4-week mark, and then all of a sudden, at 5 weeks old, same thing. She went after them with a vengeance. She was trying to kill them. And I said, okay, time for her to go. And she never raised any more, but oh my word, that hen, I've never seen a hen that rejection meant death for the chicks. I mean, that's what she was trying to do. She was going to kill them. And so we just named her Dusty the Destroyer. That's what she tried to do. Another story I'll tell you. Sometimes hens know more than you do. Now, I know there was anything wrong with all those chicks, all those first-timers crushed. People say, well, sometimes a hen knows if something's wrong with a chick, and they'll just kill it. That can be true in some cases, but these were just first-timers, and they didn't really understand. The hormones told them to sit, but they didn't know what that thing was moving under them, and when it started to come out, they probably thought pest, mice, whatever. But I had another buff Orpington. This time it was a breeder quality. I got her from a breeder in Pennsylvania, and her and other ones, and her name was Nugget. She was just this gorgeous gold color. She was beautiful. Big, beautiful buff Orpington hen. What they're supposed to look like, not hatchery stock. And Nugget was a fine broody. She raised batch after batch after batch, brood after brood of chicks. And I can't remember how many total she raised. It might have been 5 or 6. And she didn't reject them. She let her kids stay with her until I took them away. I mean, I remember the last time she raised up one. She had her 15-week-old son sitting next to her. So, yeah, it was, she was a good broody. She was actually one of the best broodies I ever had. But near the end of her life, I didn't have a lot of fertile eggs for whatever reason. And she went broody again, and I gave her eggs. Well, she only had like 3 eggs or something like that. I can't remember why I didn't have any more. But at the end, on hatch day, we were down to just 1 egg, 1 fertile egg. And I could tell it was in the air cell. I could hear it cheeping. And I thought, oh, Nuggets, let's going to have 1 baby to raise. Well, I went out, I'd check on her constantly, and I went out to check on her to see if the baby was hatched. And she had crushed the baby in the egg. And I pulled the baby out, and I pulled it out of the egg, and I thought, there's nothing wrong with this baby. It's not deformed. There's nothing wrong with it that I can tell. Nothing. And the thing is, she knew what she was doing. She had to know what she was doing because she was a very experienced broody, as you understand. But in hindsight, a few weeks later, Nugget passed away. And it's almost like, I said to my husband, I said, I know she probably didn't know, but you think she knew she wasn't going to raise this baby? Because she always raised her babies. And, you know, that's just, maybe it's just anthropomorphizing, I can't say that word anymore, giving human traits to animals, which chickens do have more intelligence and more emotion than people do give them credit for. That is true. But it was the oddest thing because I couldn't figure out any excuse for her to have killed the baby, but she did it on purpose and she knew she was doing it. This wasn't a first timer, by a long shot. So broody hens are a little bit more complicated than you think, and you never know when they're going to reject their chicks or how they're going to reject their chicks. Cricket right now, all she's doing is she'll just thunk them in the head a little bit, and they squeal and they're like, Mommy, what did I do? You know, it's kind of like, and Mace couldn't understand it at all. He was freaking out, and he's like, Mommy, he'll squeal, and he'd try to get back under her. And he's still trying to be a mama's boy, and you know, the mama's boys always cry the loudest in humans and in kids and in chickens. You know, they just, he's the mama's boy. Well, he's learning not to be a mama's boy. Mama has said, it's time to grow up, kids. I've had it. So broody hens are not as trouble-free as most people seem to want you to believe, and the breaking them up in the ways people say, oh, you can just do this and this and this, and it does not always work. I have had several hens that there's no way. When you put a bag of ice cubes in her hen and she don't break up, when you dunk her in water multiple times a day and she doesn't break up, I put her in a cage with air flowing under her, she didn't break up, the hen was not going to break up. Some are just very determined. If you can break one up that easy, kudos to you. But that one was not going to have it. Sunny wasn't going to have it. And she almost killed herself doing that. So, and then, you know, I had another broody hen. I had a silver phoenix hen, a hatchery silver phoenix, named Molly. And she went broody. And I said, I don't want her to have chicks. And so I was trying to break her up for like 3 weeks, and she wouldn't break up. So I said, I give up. I'm going to give her, I know it's going to keep her broody longer, and I don't like that, but I'm going to give her some eggs. I gave her a few eggs, and she was happy as a clam, and she sat on those eggs. Now, at the same time, my hen Amy, Belgian Danver Amy, who raised several broods herself, she already had chicks that were a couple of weeks old. Oh no, she didn't. She had chicks a couple of weeks after Molly, so her babies hatched afterwards. So hers were younger. It's been a while, so I'm trying to remember the story. So I had these two hens with babies. Well, my husband went out one morning when Molly's babies were 2 weeks old. He said, Cynthia, you come out here. He said, Molly's dead. I said, what? Molly had died during the night, and her babies were, now we had a heat lamp in the cage, so that when the babies were out from under, it was cool. It was pretty cold. And when her babies were out from under her, they would still be warm. Because Molly was a very, yeah, if you know silver phoenix, they're a very lean-bodied, small-bodied, large fowl bird. And I just thought I'd like to have a little heat lamp in there, just in case. Well, it's a good thing I did. The chicks were trying to get under Mom, and Mom was getting cold. And I said, oh my gosh, Amy. I said, get the babies and let's give them to Amy, because Amy's pretty good about stuff. And I thought, if Amy rejects them, I'll just have to put them in a brooder. I took Molly's babies out. They were just totally freaked out, of course, poor things. And I went and took them to Amy. Now, this doesn't always work, and it may not work, because hens know which ones are theirs. But we put them in there with Amy and her babies. And the funniest thing happened. Amy walked over to them, and she took each one, and she thought it's just like she was doing a roll call. She tapped each one lightly on the head, like, you're not mine, and you're not mine, and you're not mine. And then all of a sudden she was like, here, come eat this stuff. And she was fine. She adopted Molly's chicks, and so Amy raised all the chicks herself. And Amy was, you know, a little Belgian Danver hen, like my Mina. So, and she's Mina's mother. So there's all kinds of things that can happen with broodies. And I think Molly was doing the fake eating thing. She really wasn't broody. I have seen people keep these hens broody for time after time after time, and I don't think that's good for their health. And I don't know if Molly was just not eating, and I thought she was eating and drinking, and she probably was not. She was doing the fake eating thing, I bet. And I think she just got too run down, or there could have been something else wrong with her. I mean, it could just be there was something wrong with her. And the stress of raising the chicks and the reduced food and water that Broodies always go through could have just exacerbated whatever was wrong, and she died. But and it was too bad, because she was so beautiful. I was very fond of Molly. But anyway, there's just some stories about what things can happen with broody hens. This was the longer video, but they're not always as trouble-free as people think, and they're not always a slam dunk with a broody. Now, a lot of times, if you have a broody, you can incubate eggs in the incubator. If you've got a lot of hens in the coop and you just don't really want to mess with separating a broody, you can always hatch a few eggs, and then when it's time, when it's at least 2.5 weeks or close to 3 weeks, when eggs would have hatched after she goes broody at the beginning, you can take a freshly hatched chick from the incubator, and just carefully stick it under her wing, and let her, and then supervise and make sure that she's going to accept that chick. You can trick her into thinking those are her chicks, even if she's not been sitting on eggs. The brain kind of fools her into thinking, I've been broody, here's a baby. So it can help. And I know there are a lot of people who say, do you just leave eggs in the coop and then she'll just get a clutch and then she'll just sit when she gets enough? That's the way it works in the wild bird kingdom. I would not suggest doing that in a chicken coop. Especially not when you've got all kinds of other birds around. And the thing is, you can let eggs sit in there and you don't know how long they've been there. And they may not go broody, because some just never go broody. Some never do. I've got, some, my Brahmas. Bonnie and Brandy have been broody a lot. The first 2 years of life, they each went broody once a quarter. That's 8 broody spells between those two in the first 2 years. And then Cora just went broody. I didn't let her have eggs. But BJ never went broody, and Bailey never went broody, and Betsy never went broody. So even though you may have a line that tends to broodiness, they don't all go broody. So you can't always count on, when they get enough eggs, they're going to sit on them. Not necessarily. And then they get old, and then, I would collect eggs, put them in a cool place, and then when you're ready if a hen goes broody, keep swapping them out every couple of weeks, swap them out, rotate them, and then when she goes broody, take them, put a number on them, put black, don't put red, put black magic marker or something, and no, it doesn't bleed through, it's okay, it's not going to hurt the egg. Put black, number the eggs so that when you go to candle the eggs, and that's a whole other thing, to see if they're actually growing chicks, that you can know if number so-and-so looks a little funny and you want to redo it again in a week or whatever. So I would not ever advise just leaving eggs in there and thinking they're going to get a clutch together and then go broody. That does not always work, and sometimes it leads to very old eggs or rotten eggs or whatever if you lose track of what's going on. So I wouldn't do that. But I'm going to quit before it's 30 minutes, and I hope this helped a little bit with the broody hens. You just have to make sure they're eating and drinking and pooping once a day, and broody poop is the worst smell on the planet. When they hold it that long and then they let it go, it's toxic waste. Let me tell you. I always said if you want to win a war, in the short term, drop broody poop from an airplane on top of the enemy, and then if you want to destroy their country, short term, drop kudzu. If you don't know what kudzu is, Kudzu, look it up. Oh my goodness, it'll take over the country. So that was just a joke. But yeah, broody poop is no joke. Oh my word. Ugh. That smell, as soon as she unloads it, that smell will hit you in the face. You just like bury it quick. So I hope this is helpful to you. If you have any questions, just leave them below. I mean, I've had a lot of broodies in the last 17 years. Sometimes too many. And sometimes they're frustrating. And sometimes you don't want them. But y'all have a great Sunday and a great upcoming week, and hope this was helpful. Bye, y'all.